and a very warm welcome to the podcast, Dr. Robert Wolf. How today, Robert?
I'm well, thank you. How are you?
Wonderful. So, guests
Thank you
just
for
want
having me.
this question asked generally. So, where are you right now on planet Earth?
Planet Earth. I'm up in space. I'm rotating. If I were lucky, I'd be rotating around in the satellite right now. Maybe that sounds not too bad, right?
That sounds good.
No tariffs up there. I'm in southern Florida. I lived half my life in Michigan, half my life in New England, and now I'm in southern Florida since right before the COVID. Lucky me, I got down here 2019, and
So the weather-wise, what's it like? Make us jealous.
you picked the wrong day to ask. We've had on and off thunder showers, and you might even hear a bolt or two, a clap or two behind me if it's close enough. And they're scary down here, but it's been great weather. We've had, I don't know, 2 3 months of 70s, 80s, very little rain, very little humidity. You open the door, you open the windows in the morning, keep them open for a couple hours till it heats up, that kind of thing. I don't swim outdoors as much as I used to, or I'd like to, but I do want to go back to that, especially in the summer. It's the best exercise in the summer. Stay cool. No, I'm doing all right. I stay busy. I work at home. I'm a radiologist. I just retired. Back when I'm full time or whatever it was, when you combine being an author and marketing and doing radiology, I didn't get to see much sun anyway, which that's okay because my dermatologist says don't do it. So don't get too much sun exposure, and he's right. So everything in moderation. But the weather's been great here, except for today, just a little bit off. We needed the rain, though, no doubt about it.
So explain, you name drop there, you did, Robert, a radiologist. So what is a radiologist for anybody who's
Oh,
not
radio.
in the
Okay.
field?
So, all right. Well, I was lucky enough to be raised in Michigan, like I said, half my life in Michigan. And I went to medical school back in Michigan, University of Michigan, which I was very grateful to get accepted there. I went to Tufts undergrad near Boston. And then I did a year internship in Boston, in the Boston area. I did a radiology residency at Brown in Providence, Rhode Island. And then I did a neuroradiology fellowship, which is further training at Yale. So, very, very lucky. That was about 30 years of sweat when you go all the way back to kindergarten and even earlier. But 35 years as a practicing radiologist, 9 years when you include those three stops that I just talked about. So we're talking about a 44 year, and it's not just 44 years. There's a lot of sweat to it, and I enjoyed doing it. Of course, a radiologist, we are physicians, and we read X-rays, CAT scans, MRIs, ultrasounds, mammograms, nuclear medicine. Then there's other factions. There's interventional, where you're doing procedures on patients. There's neurointerventional, which is a highly specific type of interventional radiology. There's a whole diversification of the field, and nobody knows everything. There's a lot to know. It's a great specialty to be in if you like anatomy and you like pathology, and it's a hard job. It's very assembly line. Sometimes you read up to 200 cases a day, which is quite a bit. The nicer days is when you're reading, I don't know, 30 or 40 MRIs a day. Then you can breathe a little bit, get lunch, that kind of thing. So depends, call and weekends. I did my dues. It's a very gratifying professional. I've helped many, many people doing either interventional or finding a pneumonia on a chest X-ray or whatever the case may be. So that was my charge for 35 years. And now my vectors changed just a little bit, so I'm more focused on other things now. But it was I'm grateful to have completed that career, and now just recently retired. The last few months now. So
Would you go back if Robert went back 30 odd years? Would he tell younger Robert anything different? Would you do
uh,
anything different?
well, it was hard learning how to be a team player, I guess, when I first started being a lowly medical student who I struggled with it. I didn't like the specialties we were rotating through. I liked the first 2 years; it's very academic, but it's very overwhelming the amount of material you learn in 2 years. But uh, stay with the team, be a part of the team. You can learn something from every case. You can learn something from every physician or attending, whatever you want to call them. You can learn something from every person. So there's that. Be patient. Realize that you're not going to know anything. You go to 4 years of college, you don't know squat. You do 4 years of medical, you don't know squat. 4 years of residency, you don't know squat. So no substitute for experience. That's another thing. You can't. There's just no substitute for it. Change instead of doing radiology, maybe MBA. run a mutual fund for Fidelity. That's kind of a retroactive fantasy, I suppose. Professional sports, of course, that kind of thing. But there's so many good athletes out there. I guess I had to rely on my mind more than my physical prowess. But don't get me wrong, I love sports, all of them. I mean, I play. I've been active with sports. I watch them, and it's part of my psyche too.
Did you find it difficult, before we move on to the book, did you find it difficult finding time for yourself with all of this going on?
Um, well, the good news is I've been part-time for 19 years.
Right.
So I've been full-time. I did my dues, first half of my career, plus all that time in the hospitals and in med school and studying and on call on weekends. So I got a little burnout from that, truthfully. So I just slowly went to part-time, and instead of doing night call and weekends and working in hospitals and catering to the demands of just about everything, it got a lot simpler. So I went to part-time back quite a while ago now. So probably 20 years ago, 19 years ago. So that made it palatable. And well, I'll talk more about that a little bit when we talk about the history of the book. But I don't think I'd change a thing. We've saved, we've invested, stuck with the program, pay off debt early, pay early and often as if you can. And that's something else I teach the kids and my younger self. Invest early and often and work hard and be a team player, and you'll get through it. So,
And in terms of the debts for college, what are we talking about to be a doctor?
well, you got to go through
Thousands?
in the United States,
Yeah.
K through 12, kindergarten through 12th grade. I know every country has its own little system. So, and then it's 4 years of college or university. If you're very, very smart, I mean, you could probably do it in three. Some people they stay longer, they get their master's degree, so that'd be 5 or 6. Some people don't get into medical school right away, so they take an extra year, do a fellowship or a teaching year or research or whatever it is. But if you're going straight through and you're lucky enough to do that, then it's 4 years of college, then it's 4 years of medical school, and then like I said, for me, it was a year internship, 4 years of residency, and a 1 year fellowship. I've seen people do 2 year fellowships, 1, 3 and 1, 1, 2 and 1, whatever. People that get their PhDs, they get a combined MD, PhD, so that takes a few extra years. Now you're talking well into your 30s before you're even trying to get ahead. Not that you're poor, but it's just the cost of living has gone up so much. I don't know what they're paying residents now, but back in the day, we had enough to get by and maybe go out on the weekends and occasional vacation. But as hard as the work was, though, with the night call on the weekends, the interventional MRI call, whatever, we did get a lot of time off when I was full time, like 1 week out of the month. But
Right.
truthfully, well deserved. I mean, I'm not a big entitlement guy, but we worked hard the other 3 weeks and then took a week off. Some of these packages are even better that they're often radiologists because it's so medicine. We're short of doctors in general and radiologists included, and that's going to continue to be the case if the demographics keep longer living population, aging population, growing population, all those demographics for one thing, and then all the bureaucratic stuff, all the paperwork, insurances are going to talk doctors out of becoming doctors, and so there's more nurse practitioners or physician's assistants instead, maybe a little less expensive, but your quality of healthcare may not be quite the same as if it was a full-fledged MD. And I'm not saying that to be against, to piss off anybody. Just it's just they're better educated, or they're just more their education is more prolonged.
It's a changing world, Robert. It's a changing world.
I can't keep up. You need a program every
That's
day.
it. Um, okay, so let's pretty much kind of start the first thing I want to start on. Obviously, you're the author of a book, not a real enemy. But can you go back? What memories do you have of your mum and dad, Judith and Erwin? I mean, what memories do you have? Um, did they ever speak to you about any of this stuff? And how did you find out?
Okay, great question. First half of my life, not so much. Like I said, you heard what first half of my life was about. So by the time I was finished, I had to work and night call and family and very, very busy. So I didn't really think much of the Holocaust at the time. My mom and dad were educators all their lives. Once they got established, they came to the United States and got established. They were educators. I didn't think much of it. And then the more my mom talked about it, the more burnout I got from it. She would talk to my wife and family and friends and just about every day. History too, communism, all of that. But I got tired. I didn't think much of it. I did read my dad's the history of the book a little bit back to the 70s. The book covers Hungary from the end of World War I to the end of the Hungarian Revolution in '56. So it's quite a span. It was my dad's autobiography that I turned biography, and they did this in the '70s when they were finally in Detroit and established. And they wrote the stories as though they'd happened the previous day. They were clear, they were sharp. The descriptions were amazing. How the table was set, the smells, the sights, the fear, the cold, all of that. So you actually feel. And I was so amazed. So sorry. So they went from paper and pencil to typewriter to computer to ultimately to disc. Flash forward, my dad dies in 1997. Unfortunately, my mom dies in 2016. I took care of her affairs for a year, and then I retired. And then a friend of mine from Michigan, never burn your bridges, another good piece of advice, offered me a job. He said, "Look, we're very short radiologists. Can you do part-time 2 days a week from home?" And I did, and that's the job I just retired from a few months ago. But it was just ultrasound and X-ray 2 days a week. So when my mom passed away, a historian friend of ours handed me the disc with my dad's story and said, "You've got to read this. You've got to look at this." So I go back to work for in radiology, and we have two screens as radiologists. The left is the patient queue, the list, and the right is the images. So between cases, the left was my dad's autobiography, and the right was me turning it as accurately as I can into a biography. So I dictated as a biography, and here we are. So when I read the story for the second time, the first time, like I said, I didn't think much of it. Maybe 30 years ago, I read the manuscript. I remembered his first escape, but really not much else. This time, I'm saying, holy cow, 4 escapes, 20 miracles, amazing stories. He was lucky to make it. I'm lucky to be around. And my mom, not so much. Ironically, my mom didn't document on paper as much, even though she was more of an educator than my dad, but he was too, because he was in forced labor camp and his parents, the grandparents I never met, unfortunately killed at Auschwitz. So there's no sugarcoating in the book. Not everything's pretty. There's some funny stories. There's some sad stories. Most people say you can't put it down. But the motivation was there. When I saw the stories, I said to myself, I can't keep this on a disc or on a computer screen. I want to share it with the world. So we're a few years in now, but we queried agents and publishers, and for little success. I had a beta reader look at the manuscript, and she said, "I've got somebody that you might want to hook up with," and that was Janice Harper, my co-author. Thank you very much. If it weren't for her, we wouldn't even be here. And we're back to this team play thing. A great team, great publishing house, great guy who's come on the journey with me. Mark, he's been running my well, he taught me about social media back in 2018, and now I'm kind of entrenched in it. But he ran my website, and he's still doing that, and he's been along the journey with me too. So Janice did a great job. Parallels. So my we'll call it a boring biography, even though the stories are amazing. It was dad was born on, dad did this A to B to C, whereas she changed the order of the events, parallel stories, converging stories, letters to and from home, conversations, very deep, very personal. So and here we are. We've won 4 awards, and we're still going strong with podcasts and interviews and book presentations, and all in the name of fighting anti-Semitism. This is my charge now.
That's wonderful. You've actually led into that. Can you simplify? Can we hear these words anti-Semitism, racism, and there's a lot of it out there in terms of the terminologies. Can you simplify what anti-Semitism is? As
I so wish
simplistic
I
as
could.
possible. I
I
know
wish
it's
I could. It's unnecessary, relentless, uneducated, in my opinion, view of Jewish people. It's most people are not anti-Semitic, and thank God for that. When this lady, ironically, the lady that hooked me up with my co-author said to me when I was querying publishers and agents, said, "Don't equate the word racism with anti-Semitism. They'll think you don't know what you're talking about." To me, it's a blurry line. I think it's all the same thing. Whether we're talking about the African Americans with the race riots, 60s and 70s, the lack of human rights or civil rights. We could talk about South Africa. We can talk about Exodus. It's my favorite. It's my favorite book of Moses. It's my favorite book story in the Old Testament is Exodus because it's about escape. It's about freedom and democracy. So anti-Semitism is also, it's persecution, it's torture, it's murder, it's unnecessary hate. So no simplistic thing. And we all know about October 7th and all the collateral that that's caused, not only in Gaza and Israel, but all over the world. That's so hard for me to get my hands around because as a radiologist, we're into preservation of life, the beauty of the human anatomy, the cell, and not just humans, dogs, cats, giraffes, you name it. So for me to understand a person who would chop your head off in a second or shoot you down or torture the hell out of you before they kill you, it's just unimaginable. I'd love to educate them all, and maybe someday we can. It seems like a lot of civilians in the area want peace in Israel and around, which is good to see. Syria has changed, and Iran is a big problem. We've talked about it a lot. And Hamas is, they're a little subsidiary of Iran and the Houthis and Hezbollah, et cetera. It's really, it's discouraging. And not only those people, the skinheads and the and African American heroes, the United States, very disappointing when I hear them LGBTQ people that are famous talking bad about the Jewish people, or even praising Hitler and the Nazi world. And these people didn't realize you were next. The Jewish people perished, but they were killing disabled, the elderly, the very young, LGBTQ, anyone who didn't fit in with their concept of the perfect race.
Well, what is Robert again? And I hate saying simplicity, but
That
you,
was simple.
no,
That's
no,
as
but
simple as I can make it.
no, no, it's good because I tell you why. Even my parents were asking me, could you ask Robert, the situation with Israel, Palestine, Hamas, what is the history behind that? The reason I'm asking this because this will be a conversation kind of starter when I'm with friends or colleagues, and you get different points of views, but. What is the background to all of that? Because we hear a lot of noise on media. We hear this side, that side, this side, that side, but nobody actually sits down to kind of say, well, when did when did this start, or who owns what, or who you know what I'm trying to get at? What is
I guess, yeah. I mean, I'm going to go back to Exodus. I mean, it was the Egyptians and the Jews were the enemies, and then the Palestinians and the Jews. Now, I don't know if the current Muslim society is derived from Palestinian, or not Palestinians. Sorry, Philistines was the word. The Philistines. The Joshua in the Battle of Jericho, and David and Goliath, and Samson and Delilah with the Philistines. So it goes way back to then. And then we had a rough time. What, the first 1,000 years, 1,500 years at least, after AC or ACE is the Jewish people, before Common Era, after Common Era, but in Christianity they call it BC and AD. It was tough. The Crusaders, the Spanish Inquisition, you name it, and not only Jewish people were the victims, but of course Muslims as well. So many, many, many years, centuries of not understanding each other, not accepting each other, going just always at battle, whether it was territory or religion or money, or whatever the heck it was. So, and here we are now. So 1948, Israel becomes independent. They have the diaspora. A lot of the Holocaust survivors and their offspring go to Israel, and it was pretty barren back. If you see photographs of Israel when it first became independent, there was nothing there. Now it's beautiful. It's flourishing. Truthfully, I never felt safer. I was there the year, almost to the date, the year before the attacks. I never felt safer. Military everywhere, uh, people that were integrated well. Most of the people, Arabic, Jewish, they were very, very well Christian. Beautiful sites, well preserved, and all three religions we saw on tour, all three religious, sites on tour, more Christian than anything. It's awe inspiring. I mean, it's hard to. So it's not all about that. I mean, there's a handful of guys, and I always say that it's always one guy that ruins it for everybody. Osama bin Laden or Saddam Hussein, or Hitler, Pol Pot, Castro from Cuba. It's one guy that ruins it for all, gets everybody riled up, and it's either herd mentality or fear that you might not live, or you might get tortured or imprisoned if you don't go along with the leadership. So I believe that I'm trying to be optimistic that things improved in the Middle East. People got to get tired of picking on Big Brother, losing, and you got thousands and millions of people dying, like Ukraine also, and it's just a waste. There's just no reason for it. So that's part of the reason I'm doing this in my own little corner through my dad's book is that what happened to my dad could happen to anybody. What's happening now in Gaza and elsewhere happened 80, 100 years ago. And I think that my parents wanted to share the story for me just because they knew this would be the case. And I guess they knew I was going to write the book. And if you knew me 6 years ago, you'd never say this guy would ever write a book. But I hate it when my parents are right, but they were right.
When you were there, Robert, you mentioned the day before when you were in Israel. You were there the day before this attack
So,
happened.
sorry, year before.
Year
Did I say?
before, sorry. Did you
Yeah.
ever get a hint then? I know you were saying there's always a possibility of a threat, but did you ever get a hint that that would actually happen? What happened?
Well,
And why it
October 7th.
escalated now? Yeah.
No, no, never. I mean, we're talking about tunnels. Who
Yeah.
knew? I mean, these tunnels that they built, extensive network of tunnels. I mean, no, I would never have guessed. And I never, like I said, I never felt safer. I would like to see more of that in the United States. More military, like they did after 9/11, but it was very transient. More military protecting, I don't know, Jewish stores, Jewish neighborhoods, the airports, movie theaters, synagogues, churches, you name it. It'd be nice to Israel is they're very meticulous about protecting their people. Who would have known that what happened? But I'll tell you the truth. I didn't go to Jesus' birthplace, which I think was in Gaza. It was under Palestinian territory, and even our tour guide wasn't allowed to go there. He because he's Israeli, which is weirdly weird. And I don't think he can go to Lebanon or Jordan without special permission either. That's because even though those relationships are good, it's weird to hear that they can't cross borders and a little disappointing too. Maybe it's because Israel had to close down their borders to terrorists over time, and so maybe that's reciprocal, I guess. No, never would have. But I had a bad feeling about going to that one spot, and fortunately, I'd seen it before as a kid, much younger, maybe when I was 10 years old. That was my fourth trip to Israel, but some of it's going to be very vague and lost memories because it was so long ago. But I do remember going there, but every place else I visited that they had on the syllabus and the schedule. So yeah, I had an instinct but it was just I don't want us to be stuck in some place that I'm not wanted. And the tour guide insisted, well, they're not going to touch anybody, they're not going to hurt Americans. Your money's good. They like money, and so they want you to come. And I guess for the most part that was right. But boy, did that all get disrupted.
It did pretty, I mean, obviously very quickly. I mean, when you're in that environment, even with having the Iron Dome, or, I mean, does that give you any sense of comfort? Because obviously you see it on the news, how it kind of protects, but I mean, it's pretty serious stuff, isn't it?
Very serious. I mean, Iran went full force with that whole all the days of attacks randomly. I mean, what was that all about? It's great that the missile defense is sophisticated and evolving. I wish we had that kind of protection in the United States. I believe we don't. It'd be an amazing fantasy to have that kind of a dome or a global protection from the Russians, the Chinese, the North Koreans, Iran. Back in the day, Cuba, Cuban Missile Crisis, and who knows what's in the waters. Trump has talked about annexing Canada, which is an interesting thought for our security and for theirs. And he was talking about ships and submarines that were outside of eerily close to Canadian borders, and that's a scary thought too. So Russian, Chinese, etc. I don't know how true that is, but this was shared by our beloved president. I say that beloved president.
In your own, I mean, your own travels, in your opinion, I mean, what did the Jewish people, how are they feeling against, not say against, probably a wrong word, but how are they feeling about the rest of the world at the moment?
Uh, Many are despondent, truthfully. Many don't feel that they're getting the moral support by friends and Christian or Jewish. In my journey, it's been a great journey for me because I'm meeting a lot of great people like you and sharing the word about my dad and what they went through and fighting anti-Semitism. But I don't know. Many don't care. Many just move on with their lives because it doesn't seem to affect them. But it's a little disappointing the amount of apathy that's out there. Now, if Hamas had armored trucks and tanks rolling through our streets, just like the Nazis with the swastikas, with that ugly flag that they have, and marching up and down, I think people would take notice. I think they'd have a little change of heart. Fortunately, we haven't come to that. Some of the things going on is similar to that, the destruction of property, threatening and killing and torturing people, not letting kids into the classrooms. Some of that is very similar to the 30s, rising fascism, and even communists. The communist Hungary was there's some parallels with that as well, especially with Ukraine and what's going on there. But I don't know. I can't speak for 17 million Jews, but the point is that there are only 17 million Jews, and I don't want to feel like we're an endangered species, because I think the Jewish population contributes a great deal to worldwide success, and I hope it stays that way. And a lot of Jewish families are trying to grow. They're trying to raise bigger families. You go as far as Brooklyn, New York, or Toronto to see that. I have cousins in Toronto. I'm afraid for them, but they're not afraid. They're not afraid for whatever reason. And the anti-Semitism is elevated in Canada big time, maybe even more than the United States. I don't know. So they're not worried about it. And then I have cousins in Israel. They're in Jerusalem, and they don't seem to be worried about it. But again, they're protected. I think that they're well sought after. Now, if Iran develops a nuclear bomb that can penetrate a dome or whatever, then that's a little scary. That's a scary thing. I hope that's not the case, and I hope nobody else attacks Israel too from now on. But it's almost inevitable. It's like it's inevitable another 911 is going to happen. We know it. We've had all this illegal immigration. Some people, you can't keep track of everybody, and we'll see. Praying not, but the odds are there will be other attacks. And then we see the schools that are attacked, which is horrible. Movie theaters, synagogues. I mean, you name it. Mental health is a problem too. That's tied in. I think poverty's kind of tied in with it. Mental health. People that don't educate themselves, no sense of accountability, herd mentality, whatever the reason, probably multiple. And learning hate as a kid. I mean, that's a big statement I like to say, is I want my book to be taught in the classroom, because I think education starts when they're young, and it starts at home. And hate is learned. It's not, and so is love. So if you're not raised by good parents, good family, then you've really got nothing.
It's interesting you mentioned there with, good parents. After, what your mum and dad experienced, did you sense anything within, the household as you were growing up? Because generally, I wouldn't be able to relate to it. If dad was a bit upset or mum was a bit upset, you kind of, you kind of sense it, you get a feeling. But with your mum and dad kind of holding that all the time, and I know you mentioned that some things were said, but did you sense that as growing up as a child that you had anything other than a normal childhood?
No, I was very fortunate. They raised me well. They raised me smart. We traveled from time. They took me around the world, not everywhere. They traveled themselves. No sign of PTSD. My dad was jovial and jolly. My mom too. When we had family fights, it would come up from time to time. My dad would say how we're spoiled Americans and how hard it was in forced labor camp and that kind of thing. The punchline, he'd come home tired too, and my mom and dad would argue because he was tired. He was an OBGYN, so he have night call on weekends, especially a lot of babies delivered in the middle of the night. By the way, the punchline is dad delivered 10,000 babies in his career, which makes the story even more remarkable, because I say it's a redemption indeed, because he brought all that life into the world. Now, he didn't bring back 6 million Jewish people or 50 million people that died in World War II or under Communist Hungary, but he did bring back life and did it with a smile on his face. Everybody liked him, the janitors, the nurses, the secretaries, his fellow doctors, respected in the Jewish community, respected in the medical community. And they would educate their friends and relatives, both, and also other Holocaust survivors. And here's the other thing, this is their strength, is that they brought the stories out. And a lot of people, a lot of my fellow authors out of Amsterdam Publishers, my publishing company, have done the same. But a lot of people that survived didn't, either through stress or whatever the case may be, forgetfulness, maybe PTSD, depression, anxiety. My parents could have gone to the bottle, they could have gone to drugs, but they never did. They stayed strong and smart. So, and then we have the non-survivors. We have the people that never made it, that probably had great books in them, great stories, but nobody will ever know, because they never were able to share it. So hit and miss. We talk about PTSD from Vietnam vets. I get it. If the more I read about the war or see movies about it or whatever the case may be, I get it. I would have PTSD coming out of the jungle like that, and just amazed that my mom and dad didn't. But they fought it off like in other ways, like the theater, the opera, work, education, travel, whatever the case may be. They were foodies, which I am too. They loved their food, music, which I do too. Not the same type of music necessarily, but they got involved with it all. And the other thing I learned from my parents, and I hate to ramble, is that they reached out to a lot of different people. They had Christian friends, they had Jewish friends, Muslim, Asian, continental African, whatever. And I'm the same way. I like to reach out and engage other people's cultures rather than deflect them and fight it off. It's a different mentality. And all their friends were like that too. Very interested people, very interesting people, and it's a good combination. Lucky to grow up with them and their friends.
And your grandparents, was it Camilla and Joseph? Did
Camilla and
they
Joseph, yeah, Paris at 50.
at 50? And what did you know about them? I mean, did your parents ever kind of give you
Very little.
insight or
They very little. They took me to Hungary. Well, other than what my dad recorded, quite a bit now because my dad did some extensive discussion on them. Several chapters are just about them and how they struggled after in the 20s, especially in the 30s, with the rise of fascism, being Jewish and otherwise, trying to start a business. And my dad's father used to beat him. Interestingly enough, I never kind of realized that until I read the book for the second time that. His father beat him, especially if his grades were not up to par or if he was late coming home, that kind of thing. And his mom tried to protect him. So, this project was hard when I read about my dad's parents going to Auschwitz and what happened to them. I had to walk away for like a week just to absorb it and realize, these are the grandparents I'll never meet, and how horrible it was that they passed away. The only good thing about it is that my dad's mom was taken right, and it's a miracle too that he had an eyewitness recounting of what happened. So, and this was months after the war. So, this lady he ran into in his hometown, Jur, told him what had happened to his parents, and I can't imagine the horror when she told him. But the only good thing is his mom, right off, pretty much off the train, sent right to the gas chambers with an orphan, a young child, really sad, but she didn't have to endure all that humiliation, starvation, freezing. And his dad died a week later. He was a dentist. He was a doctor and then a dentist. He was demoted over time for the Hungarians and the Nazis. But he told whoever the intake person was that he was a doctor and he could be helpful. So he got assigned cleaning out feces from the latrines in the buildings, and he died about a week later. And they think probably cholera. So really horrible. But at least they weren't there months at a time, starving and if you ever fast, the pangs of hunger are tough enough for a day. I can't imagine weeks or months at a time, or not even enough bread and water to get by. And in some cases, forced labors within those concentration camps. So my dad was young and useful, so he ended up in forced labor camps outside of that, and his story was harrowing enough. So only 5% of forced laborers, like my dad, survived, and most of them after the war were treated like they're put into POW camps. They were treated like vets, even though they weren't armed. So it was ridiculous. My dad was on the run and hiding at the end of the war, so he wasn't one of them. Very lucky.
at what age, Robert, was your dad, would you say, captured or entered these camps? I mean, what age
Well,
was it?
they riled the Nazis were so systematic, just the way they killed the way they killed the Hungarian Jews, very accelerated process, 1943, mostly 1944. My dad he went away. It was in 1943, October 4th. That's actually the same date as my bar mitzvah, interestingly enough, in 1975. So I don't know if that's a coincidence. I guess it's not a coincidence. Probably I was 13 and October 4th was a Saturday. So I mean, maybe it just worked out. But amazingly, so that was 1943. So that would have made him about 21. He had a great side story. He had bullies from his high school that had already been there for a year, Jewish bullies. So my dad thought, oh, here we go. Now he's in his forced labor camp. And surprisingly, they were very nice to the younger guys. They actually, because they realized they were in the same boat. But no, they systematically they were ordered to round up, and they had to march to the train station, and off they went. They hauled them off to who knows where. I mean, the Carpathian Mountains. They were digging ditches, trenches, landmines, airport runways, and sometimes being shelled by Russian planes, completely unarmed. Not the planes, the men, and some disastrous stories there too. But Yeah, but he was fortunate enough, as bad as because he was starving too, working his ass off, and he was lucky to have a friend, Frank. The conditions weren't that great. They were sleeping in stables and with where the pigs and the horses used to live. No firm floor, crappy roof, barely enough food to eat, and bad freezing and boiling conditions. But they got through it, and because he was useful, it made him stronger, not only physically, but also as a person. His resilience was tremendous.
Was there a story of, I think it was your dad got food poisoning?
He did. Boy, you got a good memory. Yeah, yeah, he did get food poisoning. Actually, I don't remember if it was a nun. I'm going through the book again. I do every few months, so I refresh my memory. But it was either a nun or a woman of the cloth or just a very super, super nice Christian woman who happened to be in the area at one of their forced labor camps. And my dad fell ill, probably from cow's milk. The peasants and the farmers were super nice to these guys. I mean, they would trade, they would give them food and at their own risk, of course. And my dad has you can't see it behind me, but he has a painting of the peasants picking up what they can in the fields. And I never really understood what that painting meant, but he kept that in his office, and I kept that as memorabilia. Now I know what it means. It's how they really helped them out. Um, Not to get off the subject, but food poisoning. Yeah, he had food poisoning. They had lice. He had a foot infection. He had a bad back. Whatever else? Deplorable conditions. You couldn't. There was no latrine or 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 bathroom. They just had to go outside. There was a pond nearby at one of their stops, and they said, "Look, you could only use this for drinking water." Um, the foot infection was interesting because and he had other ailments too, hepatitis, many. So he had to fight off the COVID type stuff, the pestilence, as much as he did the Nazis and the guards that were beating them and being brutal to them. But the foot infection, so he goes to a hospital. He's got to walk. He gets seen by a doctor. Deplorable conditions in the hospital, very unsanitary. Doctor comes up to him and says, "Yeah, it doesn't matter if I treat your foot anyway. You're not going to be alive much longer." Can you imagine that? That's a story that I had to share. I said, "Wow, that's unbelievable." A doctor saying that. How would you like it if our doctor, if your doctor said that?
Yeah.
So he goes back to his service, his unit, and he and his friend Frank decide that this might be a death march. Not a lot of people know about the European death marches, but they were out there, and they thought this might be it. They also felt it was almost the end of the war. They didn't know if they were safer in Austria or Hungary, depending on who won the war. So they got the hell out. They escaped in the middle of nowhere, in the Carpathian Mountains at dusk. Got away with it. Unbelievable story. And that was the first of my dad's four escapes. Unbelievable. His first two were with his friend Frank. Second one, I can't say not as exciting because it was very James Bond like or Tom Cruise like. It was right in front of Nazi headquarters, So it was unbelievable. Split second timing, the luck, the strategy for them to get out. Comic books and cigarettes. Can you believe that? Like, how many times have you heard a pack of cigarettes save somebody's life?
Yeah.
In this case, it was true. Hard to believe.
The thing I find interesting there is that, your dad got sick and then they patch him up. We won't even say patch him up, but they kind of,
That's probably all it was.
yeah, patch him up. But then for me, I can't get my head around it. It's kind of like, right, the doctor has said, oh, you probably won't last long anyway. So why try and patch him up? I mean, if he's going to go back and the likelihood
Well,
is
he
it'll
he
be a
doesn't go
death
into
march.
detail. Yeah, that's a good question. I mean, they probably just put an ace bandage on or a wrap. I mean, I don't know. I don't know the availability of antibiotics back then. I mean, we're talking 1943, 44. So antibiotics were probably just coming in vogue. I don't exactly remember when penicillin and the sulfas came out, but I do have a story that my dad was sick. He had rheumatic fever as a kid, no antibiotics then, so he ended up with mitral stenosis and had to get open heart surgery. Plus, he needed a triple bypass. He went to the Cleveland Clinic for all that. So he had an illness that definitely made a difference because there were no antibiotics back when he was a child. So I also had a childhood friend who died of rubella, unfortunately. So if we're going to talk about this argument with vaccines, I think the long-standing vaccine should stay, but now there's so many that they're arguing about that have been well researched, and I've been lucky to have been vaccinated. We all are. We take it for granted, but it's getting a little much now because there's so many.
Yeah.
But no, I can't imagine the wrapping up the foot, and then he has to march. all the way back on a bad foot and escape and run up and down snowy, cold hills and hide in shrubs and thicket for hours and hours and hours with a crappy bad foot. And we talk about the light at the end of the tunnel. It's a great story, but there's no light at the end of the tunnel when you escape. You don't know where your next meal's coming from, where you're going to be sleeping. People are going to be hunting you down. You've got that ridiculous yellow band that you're wearing that you just want to take off, which he did. If you're going to have a job, you're Jewish, you're screwed. So no light at the end of the tunnel for that. So always on the run and hiding. And they got double crossed once or twice, and they got a lot of love many times, more miracles than you can imagine.
So the double crossing thing, I mean, how then did your dad and your mum, say for example, as the years progress, how are they not cynical in relationships, of any relationship, because of what they've been through? Because if they've been double crossed, I mean, how could you trust anybody? I know I couldn't. So I don't know how
No, it
you're
was mostly individuals. Well, they knew not to trust the Russians, so that's clear. We talk about the cloak and dagger stories under Communist Hungary. Some of their colleagues trying to get them to turn to follow into to buy into communism. My parents wouldn't, and they weren't political anyway, but they loved coming to this country, to the United States, just so they could vote and vote the way they wanted and not have to claim that they were a party. By the way, they loved Mother Hungary, so if the United States or the West had won the war in Hungary rather than the communists, the Soviets, I might not even be here either. I'd be maybe raised in Hungary and speaking Hungarian, and if I was lucky to get into Hungarian medical school. So talk about another change of circumstances. But um, yeah, what else was going to say about that? We asked the question again one more time.
yeah, just generally in relation to how are they not cynical considering
Cynical. They are. Well, the arguments spoiled American people. But yeah, okay, this is a good. This is well, they were cynical. They didn't trust they trusted each other because they were the team, but they didn't trust, of course, the communists. They didn't trust the Nazis. When I talk about double cross, I'm thinking of a guy driving a truck took my dad and his friend Frank. He offered them a ride, and he circled back to what they called the dog pound, which was a holding area for escaped escaped slave labor. So that's what I meant by double crossing. There were a few others, but more help than not. Obviously not in the big picture, but more help than not in the small part of it, in the microcosm that my dad was involved in. So cynical. Okay, so my dad, sometimes people will just defend another person for a wrongdoing or an accused malfeasance because they're the same religion or the same race or the same color, whatever. My dad would be the opposite. Maybe it was some learned helplessness and learned hatred. You're no good. You're a Jew. You're raised that way for many years, so you start to believe it. But when my dad was on his feet and doing well, he called out. He again, accountability. He called out Jewish people that created malfeasance, and he expected them to rise to a higher level. And I don't blame him because I think that's a great. It's not just because he got killed because he was this and that and that. So no, and that's the ultimate cynicism, is that he'd be the first guy in line to say, look, I'm Jewish, and when you do stuff like this, I'm screwed. Now, by default, they're going to be mad at me as well, which is kind of true when you think about October 7th, because American Jews are hated, any Jew. And what do we have to do with Israel? Nothing. So, yeah, the cynicism was deeply palpable in certain cases, no doubt.
did your dad ever mention the kind of like the army themselves? I mean, was there any relationship with them at all? Could you have a relationship in terms of, I don't mean a romantic relationship, I just mean a relationship in general, like a
Yeah.
conversation with the soldiers? Was it very like, no,
Nothing. No, it's quite clear. You stayed quiet. You didn't look at any. You didn't look at any of them. When they gave you an order, you answered the order, and you wouldn't look at them, and you had to, yes sir, no sir, of course sir, thank you sir, that kind of thing. There were nicer, we'll call them nicer guards, nicer. These were Hungarians, so part of the paramilitary. Um, I don't know how heavily armed they were, but they certainly could beat them. They certainly had the power to beat them. But there were captains and there were people that went through. All right, so we'll say that's a start. And I'm going to point out too that the Hungarians, the Hungarian army, the Arrow Cross, the Hungarian police were worse to the Jewish people than the Nazis were, if that means anything. So they were more sadistic than the others. So, but no, you weren't allowed to talk or approach them. But there was a variety of guards in the forced labor camps. Some were, I will call it nicer. I mean, nice is not the right word for any of them, but some were more lenient. Some were a little treated the guards a little bit better. Some went out of their way to get a little extra food and some meat. We talk about a treat, having some meat, sausage or whatever. So there was a big variety. But no, and the men, when they're told to be quiet, here's another story. When the men were told to be quiet, they were quiet. You didn't dare disobey. Even when you're urinated on or beaten, all these other, you just did what they told you to. So, and one day, it was a captain or a colonel. I'm getting back to that soon. He lines all the men up. Somebody talked in ranks or whatever, or some kind of minor malfeasance, and said, "Okay, I'm going to shoot every 10th guy." And my dad's like counting with his finger. You can just see him doing that. I mean, for them to not notice. But talk about mental torture. He was drunk, and it never happened. And I just saw Schindler's List again. I'm doing a podcast about Holocaust-related movies, and specifically, we're going to be talking about Life is Beautiful and Schindler's List. And in Schindler, it resonates clearly with that, where the one guy escapes from the compound and he randomly shoots 25 guys. And then the other one was I think it was a rabbi who wasn't making the parts quickly enough. So he takes him out to shoot him, and the gun doesn't go off. It's jammed. And then he asks one of his fellow soldiers for a gun, and that's jammed, and his backup is jammed. And this poor guy is sitting there while, 20 clicks, 25 clicks behind his head. Then he hits him with the gun and he lets him go. It's like, talk about trauma. I mean, talk
Yeah.
about something that would still resonate. Resonates well with me. And a lot of other scenes in the stories in Schindler resonate. The time on the train, the arrival of Auschwitz, the entrance into, they end up being in showers, but you see all the black smoke going up there and elsewhere. The way they stole the suitcases, the way I'm trying to think of the right word. They falsified the reasons of why these people were getting on trains. They were taking them to workplaces. They were in Hungary. They were taking them to farms and to places to plant flowers and trees, to do that kind of florist work. I mean, that kind of thing. And no, they went to Auschwitz. So yeah, those kind of things that are as mentally disturbing to me as just being killed. I mean, just that torture, that weight. I can't imagine, or not knowing what your last day was going to be. Of course, like these poor kids still being held, in Gaza. I can't imagine.
Has, and this probably sounds like an odd question, but I'll ask it anyway. As the years went by,
The whole topic is odd. We shouldn't even have to be talking about all this except for the interesting stories.
yeah, no, no, you're right, but I just be this question just came to my mind because the right years go by and the army officers that were there with your dad um, in Hungary, and this probably sounds really silly, and please tell me if it is silly, but did any of them or their family members ever reach out to your dad or
Oh,
your
that's such a
mom as the
great
years went by?
question.
Or have
He
you
never
ever thought
taught
about
me.
reaching out to them?
It's a great question. The short answer is no. The long answer is I don't know. It doesn't really come up. So the intelligent the the hypothesis would be no. However, and I'll tell you another quick anti-Semitic story. With the renegade, the crusader that helped my parents escape, my dad's fourth escape. This is after the Hungarian Revolution in '56, which we cover pretty extensively, and then their harrowing escape afterwards. He is talking anti-Semitic stuff, trash talk throughout the. It's a harrowing escape. They got Russian airplanes with the lights, and they're trying to find the refugees. They're closing down the border. They're climbing through muddy, cold farm country, mud, on the ground every time these planes, these search planes were going by, that kind of thing. And this guy's talking about how anti-Semitic remarks were coming out from this guy. And believe me, my mom and dad wanted to argue with him, but didn't because they knew better. I mean, then you're starting from scratch again, and you're almost home. So, and even the border guards in Austria, same thing. They had bottles of rum to bribe them, and they got drunk and anti-Semitic remarks. My parents refused. They wanted to, believe me, argue with them and say, "Look, this is what we've been through. This and this and this. It's been a rough 15 years, and then some, maybe more." But they didn't. They were too smart for that. However, The one that helped them get through the final escape was a priest. Believe it or not, a priest actually helped them. They couldn't get out the first night. They had to plan another night, and he let them stay at their convent and fed them. And when my parents when they got established in the United States, they kept in touch with this priest, and they sent his parish some money every Christmas once a year until the father passed away. So that was one contact. A lot of connections coming when they finally got back to the United States, family, friends that they reassimilated with, Holocaust survivor or otherwise, Czech Republic, Transylvania, Yugoslavia, really all Greek. They had Greek friends, Polish. So yeah, they stayed in touch with many, many people, but the guards, who knows? Who know? Because the guards might have been prisoners of war too, but I don't have a lot of detail on that. They might have the guards if they were well, they weren't Jewish, but if they were considered paramilitary, then they were probably treated as prisoners of war as well.
I think it'd be quite fascinating. Just my own brain is thinking of what they went through in terms of I suppose the brain, we all have a conscience, and I suppose later on in life we might reflect about what we did and how wrong it was. And at the moment of time, we probably thought, oh, this is what we're being told to do. But later on, I'd love to know what their experience was and how they managed what they did to make that situation worse for
I'm
human.
sure yeah, I'm sure some felt extreme guilt, and
Yeah.
some felt no remorse at all. They slept like a baby the rest of their lives. It's hard to know. Let's say, forget the pilot that dropped the bomb in Hiroshima, Nagasaki, whichever. They went nuts. I mean, I don't really know the details of that story, but I can't imagine not having that affect you. Is it killing 50,000 people with one bomb or
Yeah.
more? I forget what the actual numbers are. But no, I mean, I would think a whole continuum of emotions, and some people like I think it's Goth. Goth, I think he's a lieutenant, the one who's killing everybody in Schindler's List. Well, they hung him anyway. But if this guy lived on forever, I don't think he would have had any remorse at all. So, but contrarily, and since you brought it up, but Schindler's got remorse because he had stuff he could sell. He had I don't know if it was his watch or something, I forget already. His car. He had things that were worth money that he said he could have saved another 10 or 12 uh, victims, and he felt so much remorse. He was so hard on himself for that, and an irony there that can't imagine. Here's another thing. At the end of Schindler, okay, and I guess I'm warming up for my Thursday, my next podcast. He invites the guards. They're not allowed in the factory, his final factory in the Czechoslovakia. They're not allowed in except the day that the war ends. And they're all surrounding the laborers are in there. And he openly, he practically, I mean, he's cynical, but he's inviting them to, you can dispose of these people, or you can leave and go to your home to your families. And every one of those soldiers, if it's a true story, leaves, and then there's humanity. Uh, on the other hand, in Hungary, like I said, the police were worse, and the government was worse to the Jews than the Nazis. Even at the very end of the World War II, 44, 45 was the Arrow Cross. So I guess they were like a Gestapo, and very, very brutal to the Jewish people. And in 2 months, they shot the 21,000 people at the Danube, which we all know that story with the shoes, and I don't think those people had any remorse at all. I doubt it. They went out of their way to be sadistic and murderous.
What let me just say, Robert, is there any funny story in the book you'd like to share?
There's a lot of them. There really is. I guess the one I like is how they had an egg cutter, and there was no string. You couldn't find that metal string. Like the old fashioned egg cutters. And Hungary had very little supply. You couldn't buy screws. Hardware was short. Couldn't get bananas, on and on. So my dad, brilliant, goes to a music shop, and he says, a string broke on my violin or my viola, whatever it was. And the guy believed him, but then he said, well, what note is it? So my dad didn't know anything about a stringed instrument. So he bluffed his way through that one. I don't know how he got the thing. Another one is they bought one of these those portable. I don't know. It's a cart, but it's got a heater to keep the food warm. It's got some drawers. I forget what they're called. It's a little side accessory to the dining room table. You know, you want to keep the potatoes warm.
Yeah,
Really a fancy gizmo. In fact, my parents had one
like a
in a
heating plate or something like
a
that.
heating plate, but a fancy one with the
Yeah.
rolling with the cart. And so my dad purchased a real nice one. And they never had a car until they came to the United States. So he's got to walk this thing to the apartment and walk it home. And that was the first night of the Hungarian Revolution. So he's actually walking into into their home, walking into a war that was just getting going, not knowing the next day he and my mom would be frontliners. So 2 3 weeks straight of 24/7 doubling down as a trauma surgeon. That's not the funny part, but the way he walked right into the war. It's just and they had to leave it behind. Oh, the damn thing got caught. I think it was in the lift, and they lost a wheel. He was just so happy with this thing, and he just made a joke about, I hate to leave this thing behind. We're leaving the country, and we've got this nice new thing, and it's just the way he talks about it. It's very funny. Um, what else? It's so simplified when they get to Austria, and all my dad wants is a Coca-Cola. It's just so cool. I think that what can I get? All he wanted was a Coke. You couldn't get Coca-Cola in Hungary. So there's other funny ones. I mean, not a lot of people have asked me that. So I gotta, as I go through, I'm going to keep that question in mind because it's not all depressing. It's not, and of course it's a happy ending because my parents survived and here we are. So I guess that's the funniest way to laugh is, and the way my dad had his sense of humor. Oh, the way he kidded around with Frank in the forced labor camp just to try to stay sane. That was kind of funny. Their banter. There was a guard. One of the guards was called Spit a Lot because he was always expectorating. He was always spitting on the floor. So they called him Spit a Lot. So things like that. I mean, it's not a comedy, but it does have a lot of humor in it.
Doesn't it show you that in times of difficulty, humor always helps, no matter what?
It sure does. Humor, music, sports. What's great about the Olympics, this came up the other day, is our whole world can get together for the Olympics for 3 weeks, 2 weeks, whatever the case may be. And we all get a lot of sportsmanship. But you don't see any fighting. You see the third place person congratulating the first place person, vice versa. Relay teams, thousands and thousands of fans. Why can't the world be like that?
Yeah.
So sports is another thing to alleviate tension. And a good way to get popular in high school or at any other level is to be a good athlete and be a team player in that. So, or be a good musician and be a good team player. It's another good way to, but yeah, humor, good food, good friends, any kind of culture, any kind of distraction can help make the journey easier for sure.
So, where is the best place to buy the book?
Come on down to Southern Florida, come visit me, or invite me to a book talk. I mean, I've been querying this. May I show my book? May I show
And
the May
yeah,
I
show the
show?
book.
Yeah.
Yes, dude. Yeah,
All
go
right, so
ahead.
here it is. It's Not a Real Enemy: The True Story of a Hungarian Jewish Man's Fight for Freedom. It's been out for a while now, but we're still going strong with the marketing and talking about the anti-Semitism. As you see, it's won 4 awards. I still don't know what to do with that. I'm very proud, but I'm not the type to pat myself on the back. Again, I owe my team and my co-author. If it weren't for them, we wouldn't have all that. It does mean a lot that people read a lot, that are in the know, that are critical, accept the quality of the work, which is one thing, and accept the importance of the work as it's part two. But if it doesn't help me in the fight against anti-Semitism, it doesn't mean anything, right? It doesn't mean anything. So hopefully it means something someday. It's so to answer your question, if you Google "Not a Real Enemy," if you Google Robert J. Wolf, MD, my website is robertjwolfmd.com. I'm all over socials. You can get the book on Amazon, Barnes and Noble, Walmart, Tufts, my alma mater, Holocaust museums in Washington, D.C., Long Island, Illinois, and Michigan. They all know about me. I've done talks and presentations there. And that's pretty much, well, and like I said, Google "Not a Real Enemy," Robert J. Wolf, MD. You can find me on socials. I've got a YouTube channel. I'm on whatever socials. I'm on X, Meta, Instagram, LinkedIn, my favorite, very professional, and also recently TikTok and Blue Sky, just to see if I can get more of an audience, a little bit different. TikTok's going well. I'm new, but I think it might be helpful.
You're not
Scribbling.
dancing on TikTok, Robert, I hope, are you?
No, no boobs. People like boobs over bones, over books, I should say. Bones,
Yeah.
that's funny. But I'm reading Bones for a living, right? But boobs are, and myself included, it's such a distraction. It's like, how do you, and that's a good point you bringing up too. Like the competition, like I don't consider all these Holocaust books, and my publishers put out many, many good books, and people that are accused of war crime, not war crime, hate crimes, should be made to read some of these books or see the movies that come out with it. So, um, yeah, it's an amazing thing to be able to share this, and it's just important. It's just too important for me to pass up, I guess. So, uh,
No, you're doing great, and I think it's. I mean, if you've educated me, because I think there's so much information out there that you see on certain media channels, and it's just thrown at you. It's just kind of thrown at you. And you get so confused because one channel says one thing, another channel says another thing, and it's just nice to hear. Uh,
yeah, no, I lost my train of thought for a second, but I don't like to say the word competitive, but you say, oh, my book's on the shelves at Barnes and Noble. You walk into Barnes and Noble, and yeah, there's thousands of books on the shelves. So what differentiates? And then not the entertainment dollar, but the entertainment time. Like you said, there's distractions, social media, Netflix, down here in Florida, golf and pickleball, Hulu, on and on and on, sports events. And other books. And some people don't want to read about the Holocaust. Some people don't want to read about the genre or just sad things in general. So you've got all that to deal with too. So it's an honor and a privilege to talk about it, to try to share. Well, I also wanted to say that in addition to educating people about the Holocaust and the communists and how my dad negotiated through all that, 10% of my author proceeds are being donated to the United States Holocaust Memorial Museum in Washington, D.C. That's ongoing, that's perennial, and that's in my trust. And hopefully that's goes a long way. And hopefully over time, it's a lot of money, help educate through donations to that museum. I've done two-day book signings there last year. Amazing experience. I could do that every day. Wonderful educating kids and families from all over the world, including Ireland, Australia, Canada, you name it. And so being able to do a presentation there or a signing there twice, which is such a privilege, and donate to the museum is just a great thing. And so that's what I'm doing that's a part of my journey here too, is donate and give back to the community.
People get in touch with you, and do you do like Zoom recordings or Zoom videos and chats?
Yeah, well, we mentioned the social media and my of course my website and YouTube channel, and or if you just Google my name or the name of the book, but um, uh, I also do like this. I do remote, and I'm doing a live podcast actually coming up in Las Vegas, which is really cool. That'll be my
Cool.
first. I got invited for a second podcast, which is about a week or two. I had three invites for a second podcast in the same week, all through Podmatch, which is great. And I travel. I don't say no to anything. So I've done 36 book presentations and counting, including signings in Holocaust museums, synagogues, churches, libraries. I don't say no to anything. If it's too difficult, then we do it by Zoom. I just did the JCC, Jewish Community Center in Ottawa, Canada, through a Zoom, and they loved it. And then I've done TV interviews too, but that's a whole different. Some Zoom podcasts, remote, live signings, book talks, podcasts. What am I missing? Radio. I've done three or four radio interviews. Unbelievable.
Brilliant. I think they'll make a documentary out of the book or a TV show.
That's another great question. Oh my God. So if I have another couple of minutes, so yesterday I just did I did a small part on a movie, and I've got to keep it confidential, the type of movie and what it's about.
Okay.
But I got a small part, and they said I did well, and I only did one take. So I hope I'm on the air someday. We're actually truthfully querying producers. I found this guy, a gentleman who's a professor out of Rutgers, super nice guy, Jewish, and he's helping me. He's in the business. So he knows some big name producers, and we are querying them. We sent out the pitch deck a while ago. Unfortunately, we had the Los Angeles fires. You probably heard about those,
Yes.
and a lot of them are from that area. So we're walking on gentle ground. I'm talking about a book and a story that happened 60, 80, 100 years ago, and but it's out there. So if we're lucky, maybe discovered another way. He has a backup plan for so what do you call them? Intermediary producers that might reach out to the bigger names. So that's out there. We're trying hard, but the question is, we leave it to the producer. If they want to do a documentary, that'd be great. A mini series. My co-author thinks it would be an amazing mini series, which I agree, or just a feature film if it was regular film. They all cost money. They all take a lot of time. And we're back to this. You could have the greatest story in the world, but if nobody knows about it, you're not going to sell a lot of copies. Or so if the movie, a lot of people say the book should be a movie, and if it were a documentary, it'd be just fine. But I picture it mostly as a feature film, but a series would also be good. Anything just to help battle fight and to move people as much as say Schindler's List moved me. Seeing that movie again after writing the book was completely different than many years ago when I first saw that movie. And the other one too, the Life is Beautiful, and others. So it's a job hazard having to watch these again and do this extra homework, but it also resonates. And one last thing is I've learned so much from this. Like you just said, I taught you some stuff. I learned a lot, not just about the history of Hungary, my parents, but also people, marketing, the book process, English, syntax, being a captain of a team, all kinds of stuff. And not a sports team, which I have been, but captain of a book team it's unbelievable.
I would like to see as the movie with your dad, Irvin, and Frank. And that I think with the humor you mentioned with them calling the guard, the name, and then maybe a with all of this mayhem going on, how your mum and dad actually were able to have some sort of romance that they actually got together. And
It's unbelievable. Yeah,
you know what
no,
I'm trying to
it's
get at?
yeah, no, that's how I would start a movie myself. Is the men, getting corralled, going into the trains, going to the while they're doing the titles, right? And then another 10 or 15 minutes showing the brutality of the guards, and maybe a little date saying point A to point B to point C, and then quickly getting into their first escape, and while they're digging ditches or whatever, my dad's memories of his past come through, and then a good movie would actually have a flashback like my dad sleeping and he dreams about his childhood growing up. That I wouldn't want too much time spent on that. But then the first escape, all four escapes got to be included in the documentary or the thing. And one last teaser, he missed an escape. He went to the wrong train station under Communist Hungary. Everybody made the train, got arrested, including his medical school roommate. So that's a little teaser. So the luck on this guy, he goes to the wrong train station and misses an escape that he would have been arrested if he made that. Unbelievable.
No, it is a fascinating story, and I think don't forget me when it hits the big screens. Don't
I
forget
won't.
me.
I'll invite you to the opening
Oh,
night.
you better, you
Maybe
better.
if you get
I'm
one,
hoping to.
yeah, opening night in Dublin. I'll fly. I'll fly with a big smile.
That's it. So,
Aer Lingus, right? Aer Lingus, or
Oilingus, as we say in Ireland, with the nickname is Air Fungus, because of the fungus on the tail. But we won't say anything about that. All this
well,
left me to say thanks so much to Robert Bull for chatting today on the Wellbeing Cribble podcast. The book, as Robert has mentioned, I'll put all the links in for the book, Not a Real Enemy, once the podcast has been approved and released. So thanks so much, Robert. Keep doing what you're doing. You're doing great things.
thank you. Thanks for having me, David. I appreciate it. Much
Right.
appreciated.
My pleasure.